Alright guys, in the first episode of the series we went over what classical Arabic is, and then in the second and third we went over pronouncing each Arabic letter. Then in the fourth we went over vowels, and now we're gonna go over pronunciation in classical Arabic text here in the fifth video. It's really important because we want to be mindful of any differences in pronunciation when we're reading classical text, and we want to make sure we're not making mistakes. So stay tuned and let's hop right in. Alright guys, and I want to go over why correct pronunciation is so important in classical Arabic texts. Firstly, it's for meaning and clarity, right? You want to make sure what you're saying is actually accurate and avoids ambiguity. If you have some weird pronunciation, there might be ambiguity between like a kaf and a qaf, or ghain and a kha, right? There might be a little bit of ambiguity and it might be confusing what words you're saying. So for that accuracy in meaning, pronunciation is really important when pronouncing Arabic texts. The other thing is for grammar, right? We haven't really talked too much about grammar yet in the series, but you have to know how important it actually is to make every single haraka correct, right? When you start messing up harakas or you start messing up some grammar, a word can sound like a different word, words can be really rearranged in the sentence and it can sound weird and sound confusing, and sometimes opposite meanings can happen and things like that. So you really want to make sure all the harakas are on point and your pronunciation is really good, just to make sure that the grammar and the syntax of the sentence is actually correct. In addition to this, the preservation of tradition is also really important, right? Hadith and Quran and stuff like this, a lot of it is now written down, but oral tradition is really important as well. And when you're transmitting a hadith to someone or something like that, you want to make sure you're actually pronouncing everything correctly and you're actually saying it accurately and there isn't any sort of misunderstanding, because that could actually mess up with the tradition. Obviously, it won't the hadith will still be the hadith, but there might be some misunderstanding and stuff like that. The other thing is with poetry, right? So with poetry and just general literature, there's a lot of complex grammatical constructions and stuff like that that are used to really portray a lot of eloquence. And when you're saying that, reciting that, etc., you want to make sure you're getting everything correct, so you really get those poetic nuances and really capture the beauty and the literature of the Arabic language. In addition to this, of course, the Quran, you need to make sure you're getting your tajweed on point, you need to make sure, you're pronouncing every ayah correctly, as that's really important for getting the correct meaning again, right? Sometimes South Asians, we kind of have some problems with how we pronounce things, so you really want to make sure your tajweed is really on point, because you want to, obviously, with, the holiest words, right, the words of Allah, you want to make sure they're 100% accurate in the way that you're saying them. The other thing is contextual understanding in terms of history, right? So when you're reading a classical text that might be historical and things like that, pronouncing stuff correctly is really important, because it can tell you more about kind of the linguistic environment, how people talked, stuff like that, right? That's really key for the time. So you want to make sure, you're really getting this fundamental layer of accuracy down when you're pronouncing Arabic texts. The first thing is the incorrect articulation of certain letters. So sometimes people will basically mix up certain letters like ha and ha, or something like sword and seen. People might mess up these letters because they're kind of similar, but people might accidentally say ha when they mean to say ha. Some people might accidentally say sa when they mean to say so, and vice versa and stuff like that, right? So you want to really make sure you're properly articulating the correct letter, right? Make sure you're not accidentally pronouncing a different letter. The other thing which kind of corresponds with this is the softening and hardening of letters. So sometimes you see these hard letters like to, right? And people will accidentally pronounce it like ta, right? So people will pronounce to like ta, right? People will, maybe soften the letter, right? Because the harder version of the letter is, more difficult to pronounce, it's more unfamiliar. And sometimes people might do the opposite, right? When they see something like seen, they might accidentally say so, right? So you want to make sure you're really getting the hardness of the letter right, right? You want to make sure you're not accidentally saying so instead of sa, or saying to instead of ta, or one of the other letters like tho and the and stuff like that, right? So you want to really make sure you're softening and hardening them correctly. Another thing is the incorrect use of vowels in diacritics. You want to really make sure you're getting your short vowels and long vowels correct, right? So an example could be the word katib. So instead of saying katib, which means writer, you might accidentally say katib, right? But make sure you're really stretching that aleph, right? Don't say just katib, say katib, right? So you really want to make sure you're getting those long vowels and short vowels distinct and correct. Another thing could be the misplacement or omitting of a sukoon. So you might see something like qulni, right? This means tell me, qulni, right? But instead of saying this, you might actually say quluni, or qudani, or something like that. You might mess up, right? You might accidentally omit that sukoon. So you really want to make sure you're stopping when you see a sukoon. Don't just add a fatha, don't just move on. Make sure you're stopping, because that can actually change up the meaning of words as well. The next thing is mispronouncing a shadda. So people might say, for example, rabuni instead of rabbuni, right? Rabbuni. Right? You really want to make sure that you have that shadda on the ba to make rab, right? But people might accidentally say rabbuni, rabbuni, which doesn't mean anything. That's incorrect, right? So you want to make sure you're saying rabbuni, right? You're really stressing the shadda like you should be. The next thing is mispronouncing special letters, right? So there's some special letters, for example, like noon and meme that have a ghunna sound. So this is like yang suru, right? With that noon, you're kind of keeping the sound in your nose, right? It's kind of, that's what ghunna basically means, right? You can see that with meme as well sometimes. So, not doing that can be an issue when you're reciting the Quran, stuff like that, right? So you really want to make sure you're pronouncing those special, ghunna and stuff like that correctly. Another thing could be accidentally mixing up the ha with ha or kha and stuff like that, right? You might accidentally, you might recognize the letter, but you might accidentally be mispronouncing the sound. So make sure you're saying ha and not ha, right? Make sure you're really, getting that sound correct, and you're not mixing it up accidentally with another letter. Even if you are recognizing the letter correctly, make sure what's coming out of your mouth is also, correct and corresponding. Next thing is basically ignoring phonetic rules, right? So for example, like, when we're reading the Quran, we have tajweed, right? And these tajweed rules, one being the ghunna and other stuff like that, you really want to make sure you're getting these phonetic rules down, right? Don't just ignore all tajweed. Tajweed is important, right? I can't go deep into tajweed because that's a whole another thing, but, generally when you're reading the Quran, you want to make sure your tajweed is on point. Another thing is idgham and wasl. So this is basically the omitting of letters sometimes, or the fusion of letters and stuff like that, to basically make words and pronunciation smoother, right? So sometimes, for example, I'm just giving an example off the top of my head. Qulli, right? So you see what's happening here is actually these lams are actually fusing together to be one lam with a shadda to make it easier to pronounce, right? So it sounds pretty similar, right? But sometimes a letter will be omitted, sometimes, letters will kind of change up just for the ease of pronunciation, and you want to make sure you're actually paying attention to that, right? Because sometimes, when you don't notice, what you realize is you're pronouncing something like, for example, dhanbi instead of dhambi, right? So that noon changes to a meme, right? So there's certain things like that you really want to make sure you're staying on top of. There's also stress and intonation errors that happen. So sometimes people will place stress on the wrong part of a word. This often happens with my name. People say Aatif instead of Aatif, right? So you see what's happening there is the stress is being placed on the wrong part of the word, right? So this is not really an issue, because if you have your short vowels and long vowels down, you won't really have this issue. But, just wanted to mention it just in case you guys are having this problem, right? You see this with other languages, for example, like German and stuff like that, where you really need to be placing stress on a certain part of a word, right? And sometimes if you're used to speaking English, where, stress is usually placed in the middle or something like that, you won't, be placing the stress in the correct area in other languages. So, just wanted to mention that. Another thing is intonation. So sometimes when people are basically reading and stuff like that, what they'll do is they'll be reading with a very flat, monotone type of voice. Like, they won't really be fluctuating their voice correctly with the text, right? Which is what you want to do. Just follow the natural rhythm and don't, recite or read very like monotone all the time. Like, it just sounds very weird, right? Finally, there is always the problem of, native language coming in and, foreign languages coming in, right? So sometimes there might be certain sounds that you're used to and certain influence from your foreign accent that's now, infecting Arabic and your Arabic pronunciation. So make sure to separate that, make sure your accent isn't getting involved with, your Arabic reading, right? The other thing people will do is sometimes to overcompensate for certain sounds. So, for example, there's a instead of just saying they say, yeah, like they try to go too hard, right? Or instead of saying khamsa, they'll be like khamsa, like, like they'll be like, I really need to get this difficult sound right. So they kind of overcompensate and over-exaggerate the sound, which can definitely cause a problem, right? So now you guys are probably getting a little confused. Like, you just told me I need to be pronouncing these sounds correctly, and now you're telling me don't try too hard. Just the more you listen to people read and the more you practice reading, you get a good balance and a good flow, right? Because you don't want to be overemphasizing letters, but you also don't want to be underemphasizing them and getting them wrong. Alright guys, I'm now going to give you guys some tips on how to improve your pronunciation. The first thing which you should do is listen to scholars and people who are really good at reciting, actually recite Quran and stuff like that, and then listen to how they're pronouncing the different words, right? It's better to choose someone who recites a little bit slower so you can really understand each and every word and exactly how it's being pronounced. Right, and when you're reading, you want to make sure you're recording yourself and stuff like that. Listen to what mistakes you could be making and, pay attention and go ahead and fix those and remediate those. Like going ahead and, looking up a YouTube video or a different one, if mine aren't helpful, that go ahead and pronounce each letter very clearly is going to be really helpful in really perfecting the way that you enunciate each and every letter. So as long as you guys keep doing these steps, you will get better over time, and this is something that just takes a couple of months to really get fluent at. Alright guys, so I'm gonna now read out some texts in Arabic, and I'm gonna put them on the screen as I read them. And what I want you guys to do is to pause after I read, repeat after me, try reading it yourself, read it with me, slow it down to 0.25 speed or 0.5 speed or whatever you need, and you really just focus, repeat, practice, and just use this as a resource that you can keep coming back to. You can keep listening to this recording and keep on improving your recitation. So I'm gonna start with Al-Fatiha, well, we probably all know. So I'm gonna go ahead and start it. I'm not gonna really make many comments because I want you guys to be able to use this as a very helpful resource. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Right? Now I'm going to do from Al-Muallaqat, which is a poem by Imra al-Qais. قفا نبكي من ذكرى حبيب ومنزل بسقط اللواء بين الدخول فحومل فتودح فالمقرات لم يعفو رسمها لما نسجتها من جنوب وشمال. Right, now I'm going to do the first hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, which you guys probably know. إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى فمن كانت هجرته إلى دنيا يصيبها أو إلى امرأة ينكحها فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه. Right guys, now we're going to end it off with it's an excerpt called Al-Jahiz from Al-Bayan wal-Tabyin. إذا جاء الكلام العربي وأسند إلى موضوعه وصار في محله ووقع في موقعه وتعلق بها أمره وكمل نظمه واستوى فصله وأجازته العرب كذلك وجمعته العرب كان هو البيان. Right guys, keep on practicing, keep on going over that, and use that as a good resource for you guys to keep on practicing. Alright guys, so to improve your pronunciation by yourself, one thing you can do is go ahead and find recitations of hadith and stuff like that, and Quran of course on YouTube, and this will really help you, perfect your recitation and perfect your pronunciation if you follow them and listen to how they're pronouncing. Another thing you could try and do is, look up some language learning apps and stuff like that may help. The thing is, they're going to be kind of irrelevant for classical Arabic because they're going to be like trying to teach you how to order a shawarma and do random stuff when you want to be reading hadith and Quran, right? So, those apps really don't teach classical Arabic, so, they might not be the best, but if you just want some help on pronunciation, they might help, might be worth giving it a try. Right? Other than that, of course, YouTube, so many resources, right? potentially, if I remember, link some good resources down in the description below, some videos and stuff like that. And generally, practice is your #1 friend in improving your pronunciation. Alright guys, so in the next video I'm gonna go over tackling some tough sounds like ghain, ayn, dho. Right, sounds like those. I'm gonna go over some exercises and some tips for you guys to actually get better at those. And I'm gonna be comparing mispronunciations with the correct pronunciation to hopefully help you guys identify if you're having problems with those tough sounds. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Alright guys, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please let me know how this is going in the comments. Let me know if you need any help or anything like that. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.